Imagine standing at the entrance of a tunnel dug beneath a simple Amish farmhouse in rural Ohio. No wires. No machinery. No thermostat on the wall. You reach your hand out and cool air rushes over your skin. Pause for effect. 55 degrees. In the middle of August. No electricity. No refrigerant. No monthly bill. Pause. And somewhere in a boardroom, someone has known about this since 1930. And spent nearly a century making sure you never found out. If you have ever opened a utility bill in July and felt your stomach drop, if you have ever wondered why keeping your home comfortable costs more every single year, if you have ever had the creeping feeling that the system was designed to take from you, not serve you. This video is going to make you furious. And then it is going to set you free. Hit like. Hit subscribe. And drop your state in the comments right now, because by the end of this video, you are going to want to tell someone what you just learned. Let's go. Picture Holmes County, Ohio. It is early August. The kind of August where the heat sits on you like a wet blanket. The air smells like cut grass and baked earth. Cicadas are screaming in the trees. You are sweating before you even step outside. Now walk up to one of the old Amish farmhouses. Plain white siding. No air conditioning unit on the side of the house. No condenser humming in the backyard. You notice a low wooden door set almost flush with the ground near the foundation. The farmer, a quiet man with weathered hands and no particular interest in impressing you, swings it open and gestures down. You crouch. You descend. And the world changes. Pause. The air hits you before your eyes adjust. Cold. Clean. Dry. 55 degrees. Not cool for a basement. Not a little refreshing. 55 degrees. The same temperature you keep your refrigerator. Coming out of the ground. For free. No fan loud enough to wake the neighbors. Just a small motor drawing less electricity than the lamp on your nightstand. You stand there with goosebumps on your arms in August and you think, how does nobody know about this? The answer to that question is one of the most calculated acts of industrial suppression in American history. And we are going to walk through every single piece of it today. Here is where the physics begins. And I promise you, you do not need an engineering degree for this. You just need one number. 6 feet. At 6 feet below the surface of the ground, any ground, your ground, the ground under your backyard right now, the temperature locks in. It stabilizes. It does not follow the seasons above it. It does not care that it is 95 degrees in the shade. It just sits there. Constant. Patient. Waiting. The Oak Ridge National Laboratory, that is the Department of Energy's own premier research facility, not some fringe organization, measured this city by city across the United States. Chicago, 55 degrees, year-round. Atlanta, 62 degrees, year-round. Denver, 58 degrees, year-round. Phoenix, where summer regularly hits 115, 67 degrees underground, year-round. Minneapolis, 52 degrees. And Holmes County, Ohio, right where those Amish farms sit quietly doing what they have always done? 54 to 56 degrees. Every single day. Every single year. Pause. Think about what that means. While you are running a machine that costs thousands of dollars, consumes enormous electricity, pumps chemical refrigerant through copper coils, and dumps heat into an already scalding sky, the ground beneath your feet is sitting at 55 degrees and has been doing so since before your grandparents were born. It is not a resource waiting to be discovered. It has already been discovered thousands of years ago. It was just taken away from you. Let's talk about a number that the HVAC industry hopes you never put on a piece of paper next to their number. Your central air conditioner works by compressing chemical refrigerant, forcing it through a coil, blowing air across that coil, and dumping the waste heat outside. For every 1 unit of electricity it burns, it produces about 3.5 units of cooling. Engineers call that the coefficient of performance. 3.5. That is actually considered good by mechanical cooling standards. Now here is the other number. An earth tube, a simple buried pipe that lets air travel through ground locked at 55 degrees, was measured across 47 separate installations worldwide. Its coefficient of performance? 28.7. Pause for effect. 28 versus 3. That gap, that enormous, almost absurd gap, represents billions of dollars a year. Billions of dollars in equipment sales. In refrigerant charges. In replacement compressors. In service contracts. In electricity bills. Every single year. And that is precisely why you have never seen an earth tube featured in a home improvement store. Why no contractor has ever mentioned it? Why no building inspector has ever asked about it? Because a technology that performs 9 times better than what they are selling you is not a competitor to be beaten. It is a threat to be buried. And in 1930, they buried it. The Amish did not read about earth cooling in a journal. They did not run a controlled study. They did what they have always done, they paid attention to what the earth was already doing, and they built around it. Every farm in Holmes County has a root cellar. Dug 10 feet deep. No insulation. No mechanical system of any kind. And those cellars maintain 32 to 40 degrees year-round without a single kilowatt of electricity. That is not folk tradition preserved out of sentimentality. That is applied physics, refined and proven over 200 years of continuous use. Then there are what the Amish call spring houses. Small buildings. Constructed directly over natural underground springs. The groundwater flows at 54 to 56 degrees constantly because it comes from deep in the earth. That water moves beneath the floor. And the building above it stays between 50 and 58 degrees all summer long. The Amish in both Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and Holmes County, Ohio use spring houses to keep dairy fresh and produce cool through the hottest summers, without a single watt of electricity. Not as a backup. As the primary system. For generations. I stood inside one of those spring houses on a day when it was 91 degrees outside. I am not exaggerating what I am about to tell you. Inside that spring house, I could see my own breath. Pause. 91 degrees outside. I could see my breath inside. But the system that is most relevant to your home, the one you can actually build, is what the Amish call the breath of the floor. Clay pipes. Buried under the foundation of the farmhouse. Air enters from outside, travels underground through those pipes, picks up the earth's 55-degree temperature, and rises up through the floorboards. Cool air. Rising from the ground. Through a clay pipe. No moving parts except a simple fan. The USDA documented this exact system in a manual published in 1903. Specifically. By name. With diagrams. With installation notes referencing Holmes County, Ohio. That document is over 120 years old. And the systems it describes are still running under Amish homes today. Here is a detail that makes this story feel almost mythological. The Amish who settled in Ohio and Pennsylvania came from Germany and Switzerland. They brought this knowledge with them across the ocean, buried it under their new homes in the New World, and kept using it quietly for 2 centuries. Meanwhile, back in Europe, modern engineers armed with computers and sensors and peer-reviewed journals spent decades arriving at the exact same conclusion through science. Germany now has 847 monitored residential earth tube installations, tracked by the Passive House Institute since 2005. Austria requires thermal labyrinth analysis for any building over 1,000 square meters. Switzerland has a 15-year longitudinal study from ETH Zurich, one of the most respected engineering schools on Earth, showing zero degradation in system performance over the entire monitoring period. Zero. The knowledge the Amish carried from Europe 200 years ago is the same knowledge that European engineers rediscovered with their most sophisticated modern tools. The circle closed completely. America just never got the memo. And as we are about to see, that was not an accident. In 1902, a 25-year-old engineer named Willis Carrier was given a problem. A printing plant in Brooklyn was struggling. Humidity in the air was making paper expand and contract unpredictably. The ink would not sit right. The prints were blurring. Carrier designed a machine that controlled humidity by cooling air over chilled coils. It worked. The printing problem was solved. Notice what that machine was not designed to do. It was not designed for human comfort. It was not designed for homes. It was an industrial humidity control device built to protect paper and ink. Pause. But Carrier and the corporation he built around that invention saw something much larger. By the 1920s, Carrier Corporation launched a marketing campaign they called Weathermaker. The messaging was brilliant and devastating in equal measure. They did not just sell air conditioners. They sold an identity. They sold the idea that mechanical cooling was the symbol of American progress, American modernity, American superiority. Their marketing materials, and these documents still exist, you can read them, explicitly labeled passive cooling techniques as primitive and unsanitary. Not ineffective. Not outdated. Unsanitary. Think about the psychological precision of that word choice. They did not argue against the physics. They could not, the physics works. So instead they attacked the character of anyone who might choose earth cooling over their product. They made the technology feel dirty. They made it feel like something poor people did because they had no better option. And then, in 1930, they delivered the killing blow. A Carrier Engineering Corporation manual. Published 1930. One sentence. One single sentence in a corporate manual, and an entire field of proven engineering vanished from American construction. The sentence read, "Earth contact cooling is suitable only for cellars and food storage." That was it. That was all it took. One line. Written by people with a financial stake in the outcome. Published with the authority of a respected engineering company. And read by architects, builders, and inspectors across a country in the middle of an economic crisis, desperate for authoritative guidance. By 1927, 3 years before that manual, the first model mechanical codes in the United States had already been drafted. With, and this is documented, heavy participation from HVAC industry representatives. Passive alternatives were not banned. They were simply not mentioned. They did not exist in the document. And if a technique does not exist in the code, it cannot be approved. It cannot be permitted. It cannot be built. The people writing the rules were the same people selling the compressors. After World War II, the construction boom standardized mechanical cooling as the only acceptable approach to residential comfort. Passive cooling disappeared from architecture schools. By 1980, within living memory, fewer than 3% of American architecture programs taught any passive cooling strategy at all. 3%. An entire generation of architects, engineers, contractors, and building inspectors was trained in a world where earth tubes simply did not exist. Not because they had been tested and failed. Because they were never profitable enough to include. You want to understand why a suppression this complete was worth maintaining for nearly a century? Follow the arithmetic. The Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute spent $47.3 million on political activities in 2022 alone. The residential cooling market in America is worth $29 billion every year. The average lifetime value of a single residential HVAC customer, meaning what one homeowner pays over the life of their relationship with the HVAC industry, is over $15,000. That includes the original installation, the periodic refrigerant recharges, the inevitable compressor replacements, the service contracts, and the eventual full system replacement every 15 to 25 years. Now do the math on an earth tube. Materials, $300. Installed once. Lasts 50 to 100 years. Requires no refrigerant. No compressor. No service contract. Every earth tube that gets installed is an air conditioner that never gets sold. A compressor that never needs replacing. A refrigerant charge that never gets billed. A service contract that never gets signed. In 2019, a committee called ASHRA Technical Committee 6.8, the specific body responsible for evaluating exactly these kinds of systems, rejected a proposal to create an approval pathway for earth tubes. Their stated reason? Insufficient domestic performance data. Pause. They said this out loud in an official document, while sitting on 30 years of European documentation covering 847 monitored installations with zero degradation. When researchers analyzed the composition of that committee, 67% of its members were representatives of HVAC manufacturers. The foxes built the henhouse. The foxes wrote the inspection protocol. And the hens paid for it every month. 2 years later, in 2021, the Building Officials Association of Florida formally opposed an amendment that would have recognized passive cooling in the state building code. Their public reasoning was inspection complexity. Florida, where cooling bills run $400 a month for 6 months of the year, where the average household spends $2,400 annually just to be comfortable in their own home. Every earth tube approved in Florida is a central air unit that never gets installed. They knew exactly what they were protecting. Here is what makes this story different from a conspiracy theory. The buildings exist. They are operating right now. You can walk into them. The Cambridge Public Library in Massachusetts has 42 earth tubes buried beneath it. The result, 51 to 56% less total energy use compared to a standard building. Not 5%. Not 15%. More than half. The Earth Ranger Center in Toronto runs 9 concrete tubes, each 65 feet long, buried 10 feet deep. In winter, it warms incoming air by 36 degrees. In summer, it cools incoming air by 18 degrees. It earned LEED Platinum certification, the highest possible rating for sustainable construction. The Allgemeines Krankenhaus Hospital in Vienna has been cooling critical care units with earth tubes since 1994. 30 years of continuous operation. Maintenance required every 5 to 7 years. Operating cost a fraction of conventional cooling. These are not experiments. These are not fringe projects. These are proven, operational buildings serving the public every day. And your building inspector has never heard of them because his licensing exam never mentioned them. Not because the technology failed. Because the exam was written by people who needed it to disappear. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You already own your home. You are not building from scratch. You cannot rip up your foundation. Stay with me. Because this part is specifically for you. You do not need to touch your foundation. You do not need to remove your existing HVAC system. You do not even need to tell your HVAC contractor what you are doing, because what you are building does not involve him at all. You need one thing. A yard. Not a large yard. Not even a backyard necessarily. A side yard. A fence line. A strip of land the width of a car running along your property. Here is exactly what the basic system looks like for an existing home. You dig a trench. 6 feet deep. Along whatever stretch of land you have available. It could be your backyard running toward the fence. It could be along the property line between your house and your neighbors. It needs to be somewhere between 100 and 200 feet total length. You lay smooth wall HDPE or PVC pipe 6 to 8 inches in diameter along the bottom of that trench. I want to emphasize the word smooth. Corrugated pipe traps condensation in its ridges and breeds mold. Smooth wall only. You lay that pipe on a bed of sand for maximum thermal contact with the surrounding earth. You slope the pipe at a 2% grade, a very gentle angle, toward a drain point at the low end. Any moisture that condenses on the inside of the pipe flows down and out. It never pools. It never sits. One end of the pipe connects to an intake above the ground outside your house, with a screen over it to keep debris and animals out. The other end connects to your house through a basement wall or crawl space entry point, with an MV13 filter on it and a small inline fan drawing 50 to 80 watts. That is the entire system. Pause. What comes out the other end is air that has traveled 100 to 200 feet through Earth locked at 55 degrees. On a 95-degree day, that air exits between 65 and 75 degrees. No compressor. No refrigerant. No chemical process. No monthly service call. Just physics. And here is the part that is easy to overlook but remarkable, that air is not just cooler. It is drier. The condensation that forms on the inside of the pipe walls is warm, humid air travels through, captures moisture and airborne particles before the air ever enters your house. Humidity drops from 80% outside to under 50% inside the delivery point. Cooler and drier. From a buried pipe. For $300 in materials. The fan runs on what a single light bulb uses. The pipe lasts 50 to 100 years. Your central air unit lasts 15 to 25 years and ends its life in a landfill. In dry and continental climates, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Wisconsin, Colorado, Kansas, Texas Hill Country, this open-air earth tube system works beautifully with minimal fuss. That covers the majority of this audience. In high-humidity coastal climates, particularly coastal Florida and the Gulf Coast, the condensation inside the tube becomes a more significant challenge. The system still cools the air. But managing that moisture requires more attention and more careful installation. For those regions, there is a smarter variant. Instead of running air through the buried pipe, you run a closed loop of water mixed with glycol. The same antifreeze that protects your car's radiator. The liquid circulates through the buried loop, absorbs the Earth's constant 55-degree temperature, and then passes through a small heat exchanger inside your house. The exchanger pulls the heat out of your indoor air and transfers it into the cool liquid loop. No air ever touches the buried pipe. No condensation forms inside it. No mold risk. No moisture management problem. No radon concern. And here is the detail that makes this version almost impossible for local building officials to obstruct: it uses standard plumbing fittings. Every fitting, every connection, every component qualifies under existing plumbing code provisions in every state in the country. There is no special permit required because it is classified as a plumbing loop, not an HVAC system. No confused inspector. No code that does not have a box for it. They built the barriers specifically for air-based earth tubes. This variant walks right around every single one of them. I want to tell you about a man I drove 4 hours to meet. He lives in rural Tennessee. Standard house, about 1,500 square feet, built in the 1970s. Nothing unusual. Nothing fancy. The kind of house tens of millions of Americans live in. His heating and cooling bill used to run about $240 a month in summer. Close to the same in winter. $5,000 a year, give or take, just to maintain basic comfort in a house his family had owned for decades. 3 years ago, he built a closed-loop glycol system. But he did not put it under his house. He put it under his workshop. His workshop sits 12 feet from his back door. He trenched a 6-foot deep loop under the workshop floor over 2 weekends. He ran the glycol lines through the wall of his house. He connected them to a simple fan coil unit he bought online for $80. The unit sits in a closet. There is no ductwork modification. No permits, because it is a plumbing loop. In summer, the system pulls heat out of his house and dumps it into 55-degree earth. In winter, it pulls 55-degree warmth from the earth and pushes it in. One system. 2 functions. 12 months of comfort. His heating and cooling bill since installation? Pause. 0. He called it 2 for the price of 1. And the price was under $400 in materials. He did not remove his furnace. He did not disconnect his air conditioner. They are still there, still connected, still functional. He just never turns them on. If the earth loop ever needed maintenance, he could switch back in 5 minutes. There is no risk. There is no commitment. There is just a man who stopped paying $240 a month every month because he understood what the dirt under his workshop had been quietly offering him for free his entire life. What that man in Tennessee rediscovered is not new. It is not even recent history. It is the same answer that 5 separate civilizations arrived at independently, across 5,000 years of human experience with extreme heat. The Persians, 2,400 years ago, built ice houses in the middle of desert environments that regularly hit 120 degrees in summer. Underground chambers, cool earth, clever airflow. They did not just keep food cool. They stored ice through the summer. In the desert. Without electricity. The Romans engineered cooling channels beneath their villas. Stone corridors carved into hillsides, or dug beneath gardens. The wealthy of Rome knew that the earth beneath their feet was more reliable than any technology they could build above it. The Koreans ran air passages under their floors for 3,000 years, a system called ondol, which also provided radiant heating in winter using the same principle in reverse. The earth is a thermal reservoir. Use it for cool in summer. Use it for warmth in winter. Native Americans in the American Southwest built semi-subterranean homes, partially buried structures, for 8,000 years. In a landscape where summer temperatures regularly exceed 100 degrees, they lived in structures that stayed comfortable without any mechanical intervention. Every civilization. Every continent. Every era. They all arrived at the same answer through independent experience. The earth stores temperature. The pipe is just the path. Pause. The Amish never forgot this. They carried the knowledge from Switzerland and Germany to Pennsylvania and Ohio 200 years ago. They kept building it because it worked. And because they never needed anyone's permission to do what made sense. Let us be precise about what happened and when. In 1930, one sentence in one corporate manual written by people with billions of dollars of future revenue at stake decided that you would never learn this. In 1927, industry representatives drafted the first model building codes and simply did not include passive alternatives. Not banned. Erased. In 2019, a committee with 67% industry representation blocked the creation of an approval pathway for earth tubes while sitting on decades of European evidence proving they work. In 2021, Florida building officials blocked passive cooling from the state code to protect an industry that collects $400 a month from Florida homeowners for 6 months of every year. This was not incompetence. This was not oversight. This was a calculated, multi-decade, multi-front effort by a profitable industry to protect its revenue by ensuring that a superior, cheaper, longer-lasting alternative remained invisible to the people it could have served. They did not have to ban earth tubes. They just had to make sure no architect learned about them, no building inspector could approve them, no building code made room for them, and no consumer had ever heard the words coefficient of performance of 28.7. And for nearly a century, it worked. Long pause. But the ground beneath your house does not care about committees. It does not care about quarterly earnings reports. It does not care about the $47 million that was spent on political lobbying in 2022 to IT sits at 55 degrees. It has always sat at 55 degrees. It will sit at 55 degrees long after every air conditioner ever manufactured has been crushed into scrap metal. The Amish did not lose this knowledge. The knowledge was taken from you. Now you have it back. Let me bring this down from the historical and into the practical, because this information is only valuable if you act on it. If you live in a dry or continental climate, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Wisconsin, Colorado, Kansas, Texas outside the Gulf Coast, the basic open-air earth tube system applies directly to your situation. $300 in materials. A trench. Smooth wall HDPE or PVC pipe. A small inline fan. An MV13 filter. Done. If you live in a high humidity climate, coastal Florida, Gulf Coast, deep south, the closed loop glycol variant is your path. Standard plumbing fittings. No special permit. No difficult inspection. The same physics, routed through liquid instead of air. If you already own a home and cannot excavate under your foundation, you need a strip of land. It does not have to be your backyard. A side yard. A fence line. A strip the width of a car. 100 to 200 feet of run, 6 feet down. If you have a detached workshop, garage, or outbuilding within 50 feet of your house, you have the exact setup the man in Tennessee used. You do not even need to excavate under your main house at all. Trench under the outbuilding. Run the glycol lines to the house. Connect a fan coil unit. Done. The system works in summer. It works in winter. The same loop that cools in August warms in January. 2 for the price of 1. And your existing furnace and air conditioner stay right where they are, fully functional, never touched, as a backup you will almost certainly never need to use again. I want to step back for a moment from the pipes and the physics and the performance coefficients. Because what we are really talking about here is not just cooling your house. We are talking about a system designed over decades, by people who understood exactly what they were doing, to make you dependent. To make you feel like you had no choice. To make the monthly payment feel as inevitable as the heat itself. You have sat in a house in August, sweating through the night because you were afraid to run the air conditioner too long. You have done the mental math: if I set it to 78 instead of 72, that's maybe $40 less this month. You have looked at your utility bill and felt that quiet, helpless frustration that says, this is just what it costs to live. That feeling was manufactured. Not by accident. Not by the neutral forces of the market. By people in boardrooms who knew there was a better option and spent a century ensuring you never heard about it. The Amish farmer in Holmes County never had that feeling. He built his house over 55-degree earth, the way his father built it, the way his grandfather built it, the way the knowledge passed down from the old country said to build it. He never paid a cooling bill in his life. He never sat sweating through the night doing math. He just knew what the ground beneath his feet was doing. And now, so do you. Before we move into the next phase of this breakdown, I want to give you something you can take into any conversation with any contractor, building official, or HVAC. These are the 5 questions they cannot answer honestly without undermining their own position. Question 1. What is the coefficient of performance of an earth tube system compared to a standard central air unit? 28.7 versus 3.5. Ask them to explain the gap. Question 2. Why does Germany have 847 monitored earth tube installations while the United States Building Code has no approval pathway for them? Watch them struggle to explain that one. Question 3. If earth contact cooling is only suitable for cellars, as the 1930 Carrier Manual stated, why has the Allgemeines Krankenhaus Hospital in Vienna been cooling critical care units with earth tubes for 30 consecutive years? Question 4. What percentage of ASHRA Technical Committee 6.8, the body that rejected the 2019 proposal for an earth tube performance pathway, were representatives of HVAC manufacturers? 67%. Make them say the number. Question 5. How much does a residential HVAC customer spend over the lifetime of their relationship with the industry? Over $15,000. Now ask them what a $300 earth tube installation would cost that same customer over 50 years. $300. Plus electricity for a fan that draws 50 watts. That is the conversation they have spent nearly a century making sure you never had. I want to ask you something. Do you have a grandparent or a great-grandparent who grew up on a farm? If so, ask them about the root cellar. Ask them about the spring house. Ask them about the cool room under the back of the house where the milk was kept, or where the produce was stored through the summer. Chances are, they will not describe it as a technological marvel. They will describe it as just the way things were. The way the farm worked. Something that was always there, always reliable, so unremarkable that it barely warranted comment. That memory, that quiet, taken for granted coolness is the same physics we are talking about today. They did not call it an earth tube. They did not call it a passive cooling system. They called it the root cellar. They called it the spring house. They called it the cool room. And sometime in the post-war boom, when the air conditioner arrived in a shiny new unit with a thermostat on the wall and a monthly bill that felt manageable, that memory started to fade. Not because the earth stopped being 55 degrees. Because someone needed you to forget it was there. If your grandfather's farm had a spring house, I want to hear about it in the comments. Describe it. Tell me where it was. Tell me how cool it was inside. Tell me if anyone in your family still uses it. Because those descriptions, those living memories, are primary source documentation. They are proof that this knowledge was widely understood in living memory and was deliberately, systematically removed from mainstream awareness. Let me walk you through the specific legal mechanism by which earth tubes remain blocked in residential construction, because this is important. The International Residential Code, Section M 1600.1, requires all duct systems to be constructed of materials with a maximum flame spread index of 200. Earth tubes are buried in the ground. They carry air from outside the building to inside the building through a pipe that never enters the wall assembly or the conditioned space in the way a duct does. They do not need a flame spread index because they are not inside the building in any meaningful sense. But the code assumes ducts exist inside buildings. The entire framework was written with that assumption baked in. A system that buries its airflow path in the ground does not fit the template. There is no checkbox for it. No inspection protocol. No approval pathway. And here is the insidious part of that: when a building inspector encounters something that has no code category, their default response is not "interesting, let me research this." Their default response, the response their training, their licensing, and their liability exposure all push them toward, is rejection. Not because the system fails. Because the form does not have a box for it. That is the genius of the suppression. They did not need to prove earth tubes were dangerous. They just needed to ensure that no code ever gave them a box. And then the code itself, a document nobody reads as political, that nobody experiences as an act of suppression, does the work of enforcement automatically, forever, without anyone having to be explicitly corrupt. The people who drafted those codes in 1927 are long gone. But the box still does not exist. But here is the crack in that wall. The Cambridge Public Library in Massachusetts, a public building, subject to public procurement, built with taxpayer money and subjected to the full weight of local building code, managed to get 42 earth tubes approved and buried beneath it. The result, 51 to 56% reduction in total energy use compared to a standard building. More than half. That library did not do something illegal. It found an approving jurisdiction, worked with engineers who understood the technology, and documented their way through a process that was designed to exclude them. It took more work than it should have. It should not have been exceptional. But it happened. The Earth Ranger Center in Toronto, 9 concrete tubes, 65 feet each, 10 feet deep. LEED Platinum. Winter air warming by 36 degrees. Summer air cooling by 18. These buildings exist. They function. They are not secret. You can drive to them and walk through the door. What they represent is not just a technological proof. They represent a legal and administrative proof. A demonstration that even within a code framework built to exclude this technology, it is possible to build it if you know what you are doing and you are willing to fight for it. The knowledge is not lost. The technology is not banned. It is simply inconvenient enough that most people give up before they start. We are trying to make sure you do not give up before you start. I want to spend more time on the glycol loop specifically, because this is the variant that most effectively neutralizes the institutional barriers. Here is the complete picture of why this variant works from a regulatory standpoint. When you run a closed loop of water and glycol through buried pipe, you are not moving air. You are moving liquid. Liquid in a closed loop is plumbing. Plumbing code applies. And plumbing code in every state in the country has clear, established provisions for closed-loop liquid systems. Radiant heating. Hydronic systems. Ground source heat pump loops. The glycol loop for earth cooling uses the same fittings. The same pipe specifications. The same installation standards. The same inspection protocols. It simply happens to terminate at a fan coil unit instead of a radiator. A fan coil unit is a box with a coil of pipe inside it and a fan blowing air across the coil. It is about the size of a small suitcase. It plugs into a standard electrical outlet. It connects to the glycol loop with two standard plumbing fittings. When the building inspector visits, if one visits at all, which depends on your jurisdiction and whether you pull a plumbing permit, they see a closed-loop liquid system and a small fan-driven air handler. Both have established code categories. Both have familiar inspection protocols. There is no earth tube for them to be confused about. There is no passive cooling category they have never encountered. There is just plumbing and a fan. The system the HVAC industry spent nearly a century burying in an inaccessible regulatory space has a side door. And that side door is a glycol loop using standard plumbing fittings. Let me do the math slowly, because I want it to sink in completely. The average American household spends, depending on climate and home size, between $1,200 and $3,000 per year on cooling alone. Let us use the conservative number, $1,500 per year. Over the life of a standard central air system, 15 to 25 years before replacement, that is between $22,000 and $37,000 in electricity. Add the system replacement cost of $8,000 to $15,000. Add service contracts averaging $300 to $500 per year. Add refrigerant recharges at $200 to $500 each time they are needed. Over 25 years, a conservative estimate for total HVAC cooling costs for a typical American homeowner is somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000. Now look at the earth tube. Materials, $300 for the basic system. $400 for the glycol variant. Call it $500 with contingency. Installation labor, if you do it yourself over 2 weekends, $0. If you hire someone to dig the trench, perhaps $800 to $1,200. Total investment, $1,500, absolute maximum for a professionally assisted installation. Operating cost, the inline fan or circulator pump draws 40 to 80 watts. At average U.S. electricity rates, running continuously through a 6-month cooling season, that is somewhere between $30 and $60 per year. Maintenance, every 5 to 7 years, and inspection and potential cleaning. Perhaps $100 to $200. Over 25 years? Maximum total cost, under $4,000. Against $40,000 to $60,000. Pause. That is the number they have spent a century making sure you never wrote down. I am not going to leave you with history and anger and no path forward. That is not what this channel is for. Here is what you can actually do starting this weekend. Step 1. Walk your property and measure. You need to identify a run of land in any direction from your house that is 100 to 200 feet long and at least a couple of feet wide. Front yard, backyard, along the fence line, along the driveway, anywhere. If you have a detached structure within reasonable distance, note that too. Step 2. Go to your county's GIS mapping tool, it is almost always free and online, and look up your property's soil type. Sandy loam and clay soils are the best thermal conductors. Rocky or highly organic soils require slightly longer runs. But almost any soil at 6 feet depth will do the job. Step 3. Call 811, the national call before you dig service, and request a utility mark. This is free, required by law before any excavation, and protects you from hitting buried utilities. Do this before you touch a shovel. Step 4. Price your materials. 6-inch smooth wall HDPE pipe runs roughly $1 to $1.50 per foot at most plumbing supply houses. For a 150-foot run, that is $150 to $225. Add fittings, the inline fan, the filter housing, and a screen cap for the intake, you are at $300, maybe $350. Step 5. Dig, or rent a trencher for a half day, about $200, which makes 6-foot deep trenching in most soils completely manageable for a single person in a weekend. You do not need a contractor. You do not need a permit in most jurisdictions for the basic open-air system. You do not need to modify your existing HVAC system in any way. You need a shovel, or a rented trencher, and $300. I want to close this section with something that is not physics or code or money. It is something closer to a feeling. 6 feet underground, the season does not change. While the world above shifts from brutal summer heat to bitter winter cold and back again, while you chase the thermostat, while the utility bills spike and fall, while the HVAC technician visits every few years with a clipboard and a bill 6 feet under your yard, it is always 55 degrees. It has been 55 degrees there since before your house was built. Since before your neighborhood existed. Since before the city that surrounds you was anything but forest or farmland. It will be 55 degrees there after every machine you own has worn out and been replaced. After the refrigerant your air conditioner runs on has been phased out by regulation and replaced with something your current equipment cannot use. After the compressor that currently hums outside your window has rattled its last rattle and gone silent. The earth will still be 55 degrees. The Amish understood something that 2 centuries of industrial civilization has tried very hard to make you forget, that the most reliable technology is not the most recent one. It is the one that has been working without interruption for longer than any of us have been alive. The earth has been storing temperature since before humans existed to use it. Every civilization wise enough to pay attention figured that out and built around it. And then, in 1930, one corporation decided that inconvenient fact needed to be erased. It is not erased anymore. Let me say plainly what happened to the average American homeowner over the past 100 years. A technology that had been refined over 5,000 years, tested by civilizations from Persia to Rome to Korea to the American Southwest, was deliberately suppressed in the United States to protect a newly profitable mechanical cooling industry. The suppression was executed through controlled code development, industry-dominated standards committees, deliberate exclusion from architecture education, and targeted marketing that labeled ancient, proven techniques as primitive and unsanitary. The result was a captive market. A nation of homeowners with no alternative, not because no alternative existed, but because every alternative had been systematically removed from their awareness, their education, and their legal options. The bill for that captivity, calculated in electricity, equipment, refrigerant, and service contracts over decades, runs into the tens of thousands of dollars per household. Multiplied across tens of millions of American households. Across nearly 100 years. That is the scale of what was done. And here is what you have now. You have the physics. Ground temperature locks at 55 degrees at 6 feet, year-round, in every climate in the country. You have the performance data. Coefficient of performance of 28.7 versus 3.5. You have the historical proof. 5,000 years, 5 civilizations, 1 answer. You have the modern engineering validation. 847 monitored installations in Europe. 15 years zero degradation studies. Hospital-grade proven infrastructure running for 30 consecutive years. You have the legal path. The glycol loop variant that routes around every code barrier using standard plumbing provisions. You have the practical blueprint. $300. A trench. Smooth wall pipe. A fan. A weekend. And you have the knowledge that the man in Tennessee and the Amish farmer in Holmes County have had all along. The ground beneath your house has been offering you this, for free, your entire life. You were just never given the information to say yes. This is the moment. Not the moment the HVAC industry has a crisis. Not the moment a committee reconvenes. Not the moment a building code gets revised. This is the moment you decide whether the story of the next 25 years of your utility bills looks like the last 25, or whether it looks like the man in Tennessee who has not turned on his furnace or air conditioner in 3 years. You are not waiting for permission. The Amish never waited for permission. The man in Tennessee did not wait for permission. The engineers in Germany and Switzerland did not wait for permission. The knowledge is older than the industry that tried to bury it. The physics does not require approval from a committee. The earth does not charge a service fee. 6 feet down. 55 degrees. It has always been there. Now you know where to dig. There is a lesson in this story that goes beyond cooling systems and building codes. The lesson is that some of the most valuable knowledge you could ever have is not hidden behind complexity. It is not locked away in institutions or accessible only to experts. It is buried under your feet. Sometimes the most powerful things are the simplest, the ones that have been working quietly for centuries, unremarked and unmonetized, until someone with something to sell decided they needed to be made invisible. The antidote to that is not anger, though anger is a reasonable first response. The antidote is knowledge, shared widely and practically, until it reaches enough people that no boardroom decision can make it invisible again. You now have this knowledge. Share it. If this felt like a betrayal, because it is one, and if what comes after the betrayal feels like something you want to hold on to, then you know what to do. Hit like, subscribe, and leave your state in the comments, along with what you pay for cooling in the summer and whether you have any land around your house, even a strip the width of a car. Because I read every comment. And the next video is already almost finished. Next week, the Amish water system. Clean drinking water. No pump. No filter. No electricity. Using a method the EPA tried to classify as non-compliant in 2012. They tried. They failed. The reason they failed is a story you need to hear. Click the next video. I'll see you there.